Good evening. Once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. Going to do another video this evening talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And I can't help but get the feeling that 2015 is going to be a very, very significant year as far as Bible prophecy goes. Things are moving at such a rapid pace right now in every aspect of signs of the last days. And I got a feeling in my spirit that tells me that things are about to really change, that the world as we know it is about over. And it is absolutely imperative, if you are not awake, that you wake up right now. You're running out of time. Things are going to get really, really serious. We see complete chaos around this world. Obviously, there's wars and rumors of wars and just problems in the economy, just climate change, so to speak, as they like to talk about. But there's signs of the times, the beginning of sorrows, the birth pangs that Jesus talked about in the Bible, Matthew and 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. All the signs are coming together, and it seems like every week they're moving faster and faster. And like I said, I just have a feeling that and again, I'm not speaking prophetically. I'm not telling you the Lord told me that this is going to happen. I'm not speaking prophetically. I'm just looking at what's going on with the signs of the times and how things are moving and how fast things are moving. I would not be a bit surprised if Daniel's 70th week did not start sometime 2015, just based on what's going on. And there's several reasons. I mean, for one, Barack Hussein Obama's second term as president is running out. He's running short on time, and I think he's going to do everything he can to finish his fundamental change of America and help bring on the New World Order system. Not to mention the fact that we keep hearing about world leaders calling for peace and a New World Order. The Vatican has been calling for a global economy, a global currency. Even Iran has been calling for a New World Order. How many times have you heard Joe Biden say that lately? Barack Hussein Obama has been talking about it. And there's definitely a push toward a global economic system. It'll be the last of the two blood moons in the tetrad of blood moons on 4 consecutive Jewish feast days, and that's big news. And since the first two, the prophetic events have just picked up in velocity, it's an unbelievable amount. I just can't believe how fast it's moving. But there's 2 more blood moons ending next September. There'll be one, I believe, in April, sometime around the middle of April again. And then the other one, September 27th, 28th, which is interesting because that's when Pope Francis will be here in Philadelphia for his World Meeting of Families, another global event. It's a Shemitah year. I don't have time to explain that in this video, but I would just tell you that if you have not read the book, you need to read the book, The Mystery of the Shemitah, by Jonathan Cahn. It's an excellent book. He's the guy that wrote The Harbinger about 9/11. Very well documented stuff in the books. I highly recommend it. There's worldwide economic collapse looming. I reported on more than one occasion that the CIA is preparing for global economic collapse and what will happen the day after that, which will lead to martial law and FEMA camps in all likelihood. My last story tonight, I'm going to talk more about that, kind of a follow-up to last night's video. I've got Pope Francis and his one world religion of coexistence gaining steam and popularity all around the world, even within the Catholic and Christian Church. The falling away, the not listening to sound doctrine anymore is definitely a sign that we're coming down to the end. And there's obviously this war on terror that now the so-called moderate Muslim nations are joining in the battle to stamp out radical jihadists, stamp out terrorism, and all in the guise of world peace and coexistence. We've got just signs and signs and signs. Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 7 says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." Jacob is another name for Israel. It is the final 7-year period of time before the second coming of Jesus Christ to the earth to set up his 1,000-year reign on earth of peace, the millennial reign of Christ. If you are a born-again believer, you will come back to the earth with Jesus at the end of the Battle of Armageddon to set up a 1,000-year reign, and you will reign with him 1,000 years on this earth. We're seeing the covenant of many discussed of Daniel 9:27. It will not go away. I got a couple more news stories about that tonight. It's in the news every single week. It will not go away. There's so many people talking about it, trying to figure out ways to pull it off. Daniel 9:27, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." I'm going to reference that again here in a minute in another verse that Jesus is speaking in Matthew. But that final 7-year period, that covenant of many, is a week of years, 7 years, and he is the Antichrist. He's going to confirm a covenant that will guarantee the security of Israel, probably allow him right away to build the third temple. We see the Temple Mount in the news every single day. There are some major signs that we're living in the last days. Again, this covenant of many is one of them. Jerusalem is in Zechariah 12, verse 2 and 3. It says, "I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone and a cup of trembling for all the people round about." And that's exactly what's happening. Jerusalem and Israel will be the focus of the final 7-year period of time. The whole world is going to come against Israel, and we see that happening more than ever now. And again, it's in the news constantly. And all the nations of the world are trying to figure out how to deal with what's going on in the Middle East, and specifically with Palestinians and Israel. The final 7-year period of time will be ran by the Antichrist and the false prophet. Pope Francis is certainly looking like one of those two. And again, he's pushing the one world religion and global peace, and getting involved more and more in the peace agreement talks, and pushing for peace. And during that final 7-year period of time, there will be a mark of the beast, a one world monetary system. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 18 is where you'll find that. And specifically, you'll read verses 16 and 17. "And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." It says right there, you will not be able to buy or sell without a mark in your right hand or in your forehead. Now, all of you people who think that we have 30, 40, 50, 60 years left or more, or maybe even more than that, again, the final 7 years ends with this covenant that they're trying to sign. People are already getting the RFID implant in their hand. I reported it last week. A guy that writes for Forbes magazine wrote an article about it. That he had a chip implanted in his hand, in his right hand, to store Bitcoin, which is digital currency. If that is the mark of the beast system during the final 7 years, during the final 3.5 years of the final 7-year period of time, and people are already getting that implanted, do you really think there's going to be another 50 or 60 or 70 years or more before this all goes down? All the signs are here. It is absolutely time to wake up. People are so worried about retirement and college and careers and everything else, and certainly, it's a smart thing to do to be prepared for all that as well, because you never know. But all the signs are here. The first thing you need to make sure of is that you are saved and you are ready, because this could all go down who knows? We are so close, I believe, and we're absolutely running out of time. We got a nuclear Iran on the verge, where the United States seems to be letting them build their nuclear weapons. Again, this war on terror, it's got people willing to give up their rights. It's going to help lead right into the New World Order. And then again, the extreme weather, worldwide chaos, protests everywhere. I saw protests, heavy protests in Italy last night over something, and there's huge protests again going on tonight all around the country. They got in the United States, they got violent last night over these grand jury things, earthquakes like crazy. But again, I guess I got to emphasize again. I want to point out, people are getting RFID chips implanted to store Bitcoin digital currency in their hand. That's the mark of the beast system. I'm not saying that right now, if you have that, you've accepted the mark of the beast, but eventually that type of technology is going to be the one world monetary system. It is time to wake up, and I'm telling you, do not get any type of implant, period, for any reason. And you're seeing it promoted all the time now, and even Disney's using RFID bands you wear on your wrist to pay for things, and they're getting rid of. We're moving to a cashless society. The one world monetary system is on the way. So, with that, let's get into some news stories, and again, there's quite a few to talk about tonight. The first one, again, two-state solution article. Now keep in mind, the 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, when they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction will come upon them, and they shall not escape. And here's a Fatah official out of the Times of Israel today. Two-state solution is dead. No Palestinian leader can sign away claims that Arafat refused to forego, says former security chief Tawfiq Tirawi. Two-state solution is dead. He said on Monday, calling on the Palestinian leadership to seek new solutions. Let's see here. He accused Israel of turning on the Arab-Israeli war into a religious war and ignoring 67 years of UN decisions stipulating territorial withdrawals and the return of Palestinian refugees. The two-state solution has ended and no longer exists after Israel abolished it completely, Tawari was quoted. Therefore, we must search for other solutions. I personally do not believe that a two-state solution will materialize, and say that within approximately 50 years there will be no solution but one state. Well, again, I would beg to differ on that. I think there's going to be somebody who claims to have the answer, and the world is going to fall right into place and believe that the Antichrist has the answer for peace, and they're going to want to follow him, and he will sign the covenant. This article ends, no Palestinian leader can sign away our rights in Jerusalem, the refugees, water, or leave the settlements. Whatever Arafat didn't sign on, no one else can sign on. The conflict will remain in force, he concluded. Well, again, I agree there's conflict coming. When they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction is coming. Psalm 83 talks about the Confederate group of the Confederacy of Muslim nations coming up against Israel to wipe them off the map, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. There is definitely war coming, but again, the Palestinians are wanting to go to the UN, and they're trying to find different ways around getting their two-state solution. All right, let's go to another interesting article. This is about the Temple Mount. I'm just going to touch on this one. This is just incredible to me. I'm not even going to go to the article. I will post it in the description box for you. But it says, the title is, actually, no, this one I do want to read. Let me go to that. This one is called Preacher in Al-Aqsa. We will slaughter the Jews. This is out of the Eretz Sheva. I want to touch, the next story I'm just going to touch on, a contrast the two. But this is Preacher in Al-Aqsa. We will slaughter you Jews. Blatant incitement against Jews on Temple Mount sees preacher claim Jews are abominable. With a growing audience here, it shows that this article has a video with it. It says a preacher at the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Judaism's holiest site, engaged in blatant incitement against Jews and Israel in an impromptu speech 2 weeks ago. let me start by saying that talking about the traits of the Jews requires one to get into a special mode, because when talking about the Jews, we are talking about a people to whom every single vile trait has ever been attributed. The preacher said they are the masters of these vile traits, and they taught their secrets to others. These traits were registered in the Quran, which depicted all aspects of the lives of the Jews in the most abominable images, he continued. These traits are the same today as they were in the days of yore. The preacher then continues to slam Jews, calling them the most evil of all his creations, claiming that they kill prophets and saying that it was Jews whom Allah turned into apes and pigs. Tens of Arabs can be seen sitting or standing watching the preacher. I say to the Jews, the time for your slaughter has come, he added. The time to fight you has come. The time to kill you has come. The incident is just the latest example of incitement to violence by Islamists on the Temple Mount, a phenomenon which recently prompted Israel's internal security minister to look into banning one particularly active group. Now, it doesn't mention anything there about arresting him for incitement to riot. There are riots on a daily, for sure weekly basis on the Temple Mount, where the Muslims are throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails at the police, assaulting Jewish visitors on the Temple Mount. This is certainly inciting riots and violence. It says the time to kill you is now. The time to fight you has come. I just referenced Psalm 83. They want to wipe out Israel. The name of Israel be remembered no more. They're calling for that right now. So let's look at a different story. This is out of the Jewish press. 2 Jews arrested for religious act on the Temple Mount. Okay? I just read the story about that preacher in the Al-Aqsa threatening to kill all the Jews. Wasn't arrested. The religious act that 2 Jews were arrested for on the Temple Mount was they tore their shirts as a sign of mourning because they don't have a third temple. And they were arrested for that. The double standard, the way that the Jewish people are treated, and compared to the Muslims and the Palestinians in Jerusalem, is absolutely incredible. But again, it's exactly what the Bible said would happen in the last days. All the world would turn against the Jews. And that's what's happening. But unbelievable. They tore their shirts as a symbolic sign of mourning for not having a temple. And they were arrested. But that preacher threatening to kill all the Jews, there's no problem with that. All right. There's another holy Temple Mount article. Despite a dispute of holy site in Jerusalem, pits Muslim caretakers against Jewish activists. This is a long article, but I just want to highlight certain areas of it as well. If it'll load. There we go. Alright. It says, once dismissed as a fringe group with limited public support, a movement of religious Jewish activists seeking to pray at Jerusalem's most sensitive holy site has provoked a wave of Palestinian violence that has raised fears of a slide into a religious war. Again, all the Jews want to do is go up there and pray. Are they insisting that the Muslims aren't allowed up on the Temple Mount? Absolutely not. They just want to be allowed up there too. And that causes all this violence with the Palestinians. But the world blames the Jews. And again, speaking of signs of the end, the Temple Mount's in the news every single day. The Jewish people are calling for their third temple. They want their third temple. Need I remind you, there has not been a temple there since AD 70, when the Roman Empire destroyed it. And in the last days, there's going to be a temple. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24. I referenced this earlier a little bit when I was reading Daniel 9:27. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15 says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Now that was Daniel 9:27 that I referenced earlier. For the Antichrist to stand in the holy place, there has to be a temple. Let's go to and by the way, again, it's going to get so bad. As I said, the world is about to change like you can't even imagine. It's going to get so bad that in Matthew 24:21-22, Jesus said, "For then there shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world, to this time, no nor ever shall be, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Jesus basically just said, mankind would be extinct if I didn't shorten the days of the Great Tribulation. That's how bad it's going to get. People need to wake up. It is about to go down. It is about to change. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Great prophetic chapter in the Bible. Verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Again, the temples get in the news. They want to build it. The Temple Mount's on the news every day. Hasn't been a temple since AD 70. Let's continue on. The activist efforts to gain more access to the area in Jerusalem's old city, known to the Jews as the Temple Mount and to the Muslims as the noble sanctuary, has triggered a fierce Palestinian backlash. A string of Palestinian attacks has killed 11 people in the last month in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the West Bank. The worst eruption of such violence in years, and a sign of the explosiveness of the dispute. But again, the Palestinians are killing Jews, and the Jews are just wanting to go up there and pray. I'm not going to get into all the history of the Temple Mount again, so let's scroll down. So small right-wing groups in Israel have long lobbied for lifting the ban on Jewish prayer at the compound, but they have intensified their efforts over the past year with increasing support from rightist politicians and among religious nationalist Israelis. And I just saw in the Times of Israel, the new government, there's elections in March, and it may be full of right-wing, so to speak, religious nationalist Israelis. And they're going to want to build that temple. Let's go on. A cabinet minister and lawmakers advocating more Jewish access have recently made high-profile pilgrimages to the site. And another right-stir legislator has sponsored a bill to change prayer arrangements there. Growing numbers of Jewish activists have been going to the compound during visiting hours for non-Muslims, sometimes attempting to sneak a prayer under the watchful eyes of police and WAF officials. Again, amazing. The Palestinians are rioting up there all the time, but the police are looking to make sure that a Jewish person doesn't move their lips in silent prayer. Wow. The campaign has alarmed Palestinians who fear that Israeli authorities are seeking to change the long-standing prayer arrangements as part of a plan to take the site over. Such fears are fueled by organizations like the Temple Institute, a group advocating the construction of a third temple on the site of the Dome of the Rock. Rabbi Chaim Richman, head of the group's international department, denied in an interview that his group sought the imminent destruction of Muslim shrines on the Temple Mount in order to build a new temple. It says, but the focus of the current right-wing campaign is more immediate. Lifting the ban on Jewish prayer at the Temple Mount, that demand is viewed as incendiary by Palestinians and others throughout the Muslim world who reject Jewish claims to what they consider an exclusively Islamic holy site mentioned in the Quran. However, what's interesting is Jerusalem isn't mentioned in the Quran one time. Not one time. It says the Temple Mount should be open to any human being who wants to pray to God. Heyman said in an interview, non-Muslims are being discriminated against on the Temple Mount. We want everyone to be able to pray there. Again, see, the Jewish people are not saying that we don't want the Muslims on the Temple Mount. They're saying we just want to be able to pray there too. Where's Pope Francis in all this? When is he going to come in and say, look, he's trying to promote coexistence and religious, he calls it religious freedom. How come he doesn't step in here and demand that the Jews can be on the Temple Mount and pray? Will he? Interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch and see what happens with this going forward. Richmond said this, of the Templars, who said the struggle was to be allowed to humbly and reverently move our lips at the holiest place for the Jewish people. Wow. But then here's how this article ends. It says, still the perceived threat to Al-Aqsa has become a rallying cry for many Palestinians, grafted onto grievances against decades of Israeli occupation. They want to divide Al-Aqsa, said Muntasir Salama, a 19-year-old Palestinian from East Jerusalem. Would you let someone do that to your home? That's the reason for this whole mess. Really? Well, the Jewish homeland is the land of Israel, given to them by God. And for some reason, the whole world expects them to divide their God-given land. Yet, the Palestinians are all up in arms because they said the Jews want to divide Al-Aqsa. That's interesting. They won't compromise at all and divide the Temple Mount, but they expect Israel to give up their capital city of Jerusalem and a lot of their land and divide their land. So as you can see, when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction is going to come upon them. All right. Let me go to one other news story out of the Times of Israel real quick. Moscow demands Israel explain unacceptable use of force in Syria. Vladimir Putin rattling a saber again, trying to get involved. It's funny with what's going on in the Ukraine. Why is Vladimir Putin even mentioning the fact that there was a couple of small airstrikes in Syria by Israel? Russia issues complaint to UN's Ban Ki-moon, decries aggressive actions of Israel over reports of airstrikes near Damascus. Russia eventually is going to come up against Israel in the war of Ezekiel 38 and 39, along with Iran and Turkey, and we see that alliance coming together right now. Iran and Russia are allies. Russia's becoming more and more tight with China. Turkey is mentioned in that war. Even though Turkey is a member of NATO, they're aligning themselves with Russia right now. You can see the Ezekiel 38-39 war forming. Russia demanded Monday that Jerusalem provide explanations following reports that Israeli jets had carried out multiple airstrikes on 2 targets in Syria, reportedly killing 2 Hezbollah operatives. Moscow, considered a main backer of Syria's ruling regime, said it had turned to the United Nations to bring Israel to account for the strikes, which reportedly targeted weapons shipments at 2 sites outside Damascus. Moscow voices deep concern over the dangerous development of events. Their circumstances should be clarified. In any case, it is certain that the use of force is unacceptable in interstate relations and deserves disapproval, Foreign Ministry spokesman said in a statement published on the Russian Foreign Ministry's website. It is important to prevent additional risks of further destabilization of the extremely tense situation in Syria and in the Middle East region as a whole. And Russia sent a letter to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon decrying the aggressive actions of Israel and issued an appeal to prevent the recurrence of such attacks in the future. So again, anytime Israel tries to defend herself, the world comes up against her. But what's going on with Russia and the Ukraine? Yes, there's some sanctions against Russia. But it's incredible. All Israel does, they know that there's weapons there that Hezbollah is wanting. They're going to ship to Hezbollah. Hezbollah wants to attack Israel. Israel goes to defend themselves, and the world comes against them. Unbelievable. All right, now I want to do another news story. Again, I'm going to cover this because I mentioned it some yesterday. And it is just a feeling I've got. That's why I started this video talking about 2015 and how things are about to change. And I found this story. And again, when I talk about what I'm about to talk about, I know all of you mockers and scoffers think I'm crazy. I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist. And things I'm about to talk about, they could never happen here in America. Need I remind you that I think it was Judge Anton Scalia, I believe. I should have looked it up before I started this video. A Supreme Court judge said, if you think that concentration camps are not going to come back to the United States, you're crazy. Remember that we had internment camps during World War II for the Japanese Americans. He said that there are going to be concentration camps, internment camps in America again. FEMA camps are real, period. I've talked about the one world government, the one world religion, the mark of the beast. It's fact. It's Bible prophecy. All Bible prophecies come to pass 100%, and we see them coming to pass right now. We are at the end. And for that to happen, the things I'm about to talk about have to happen. So as unbelievable as they sound, and as as bad as it sounds, if you're living in America, you've got to trust me on this and start researching this yourself. Pray, ask God to reveal the truth to you. As crazy as this sounds, it's all going to come to pass. Now, whether it happens in 2015, I don't know for sure. It's certainly my feeling. And that's the feeling of this article as well. So let's get into it. The calm before the storm. All hell will break loose in 2015. That's the title of this article. Something big is about to happen. So many say they can feel it in their bones. I'm one of them. A migration to underground hideouts began 2 years ago in earnest for members of the Alphabet Soup Agency retirees. I knew one of these refugees personally, and he pointed to 2015 as the time when he anticipated that all hell was going to break loose. I wrote an article about the defection of my FEMA contact, his family, and like-minded individuals from FEMA and DHS almost 2 years ago. Pastor Lindsey Williams recently sent me an email regarding a survival tip for the difficult times ahead. Pastor Williams has been a guest on my show several times, and I sent him back an email asking when he would like to come back on my show. This is very interesting. He responded that he has stopped doing interviews. His message indicated it is almost time to stop talking and to start preparing for some very dark days. How do I know? Some of my very best contacts have told me that it is time to stop warning the people because it is now time to start hiding from the wrong people. My initial reaction is not to believe them, but there are too many well-placed sources to not take seriously. Jim Maris saw the warning on the wall 5 years ago. I'm not going to get into all that. I just want to go into now. But he said, get ready for 2015. We are in the calm before the storm. The late summer and early fall were abuzz with the latest rumors about Ebola. Again, many of the media spent countless hours debunking the misinformation being put out by the CDC. And just as soon as the Ebola stories peaked in October, somebody in the MSM flipped a switch and virtually all meaningful reporting disappeared from the news. Why? The reason for Ebola's disappearance from the media is simple. It was Christmas shopping time. America has become a service economy. Most of the retail shopping for the year happens between Halloween and the end of the year. The financial success tied to Christmas shopping is based upon the fact that people must trust that it is safe to go out in public. If the public perceived that Ebola could be contracted by going out in public, the Christmas shopping season could be stopped in its tracks, and globalist corporations would not be able to maximize profits. However, this is all about to change. What was the Ebola scare all about? Many mistakenly believe that the Ebola scare has been mitigated and nothing could be further from the truth. Isn't it interesting that we never saw a toxicology report about the so-called victims of Ebola? When some of these victims somehow recovered against all odds, these people were kept away from the media. Why? Many of us have privately concluded that we in the United States are not dealing with traditional Ebola. What we are dealing with in the United States is something designed to give the impression that we are on the verge of an Ebola pandemic in the United States. Why would the CDC go through such an elaborate charade? The answer is really quite simple. The appearance that the U.S. was on the verge of an Ebola pandemic gave rise to governmental preparations that would not raise an eyebrow from an unaware public. But what preparations am I talking about? I'm talking about martial law preparations, which could easily be morphed from a form of medical martial law to politically motivated martial law related to not only a pandemic, but to an economic collapse. And believe me, if Ebola or some other dangerous pathogen makes its way into mainstream America, the economy will collapse because people will stop eating out, shopping, attending sporting events and concerts, and the service economy as we know it will crumble in a matter of days. Martial law preparations arising out of the Ebola scare. It says, by this point in the article, some are saying, okay, Dave, name some sources, something concrete that we can wrap our minds around. And these people are correct in demanding as much concrete information as possible. This is the point in the article where logic and common sense outweigh doubt and cognitive dissonance. Judge a man by his actions, not by his words. Forget everything you think you know and learned about it, the Ebola scare of this past summer and fall. Simply to consider the actions and implications of the following events. The United States has detailed procedures to deal with a pandemic outbreak, and it carries the force of law. I'm not going to read all the section numbers of the law, but it's in here. The U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services is authorized to take measures to prevent the entry and spread of communicable diseases from foreign countries to the United States and between states. The CDC utilizes two basic strategies when trying to contain a public outbreak of something as deadly as Ebola, and they are isolation and quarantine. Pat Watson opened a lot of eyes with the following statement. The source, an office clerk within the Los Angeles Department of Homeland Security, said that during a policy meeting on the morning of June 18th, a supervisor announced that the Los Angeles County Department of Health Service has struck a deal with the government to open up low-cost housing facilities for homeless people, otherwise known as FEMA camps. The source said that a supervisor ordered staff not to use the word FEMA camps. One look at who is behind this program should raise the eyebrows of every person as it is being administered by the Department of Health Services. A memo from the Health and Human Services speaks about setting up isolation facilities. Here is an excerpt from the report. We have so many kids coming in. This is about immigration. There's no way to control all the sickness, all the stuff coming into the country. She said, we were very concerned at one point about strep going around the base. Both the counselor and the nurse said the superiors tried to cover up the extent of the illnesses. When they found out the kids had scabies, the charge nurse was adamant, don't mention that, don't say scabies. But everybody knew they had scabies. Some of the workers were very concerned about touching things and picking things up. They asked if they should be concerned, but they were told not to worry about it. My sources say Americans should be very concerned about the secrecy of the government camps. And then it goes on. This is a really long, really detailed article with a lot of information. And they're talking about all the UN vehicles that are being moved around the country and being prepared for something. In October of 2014, I discovered evidence of Human Health Service medical quarantine camps. However, none of these camps had any medical personnel, medical organizations, or any evidence of treatment facilities. The mass transport of Ebola victims to quarantine camps is referred to as ambulance services, and it is a euphemism for transporting sick people to a death camp. Wow. I mean, there's so much to this article. Let me just read the last paragraph again. As usual, I'm going to post all of this into the description box for you. You can look at it yourself. I know this sounds like it's not going. There's no way it can happen. It's going to happen. There's no way for the New World Order to come into effect without this happening. The Georgia Guidestones talks about depopulation all the way down to 500 million. Depopulation is coming. It's a fact. And there's so many aspects to this. It says in January, the Ebola vaccines will be ready with the first trial centers set up in Knoxville, Tennessee. Let's see here. Bill Gates did not invest over $500 million in the Ebola vaccines for Ebola not to come back, which it will after the Christmas shopping season. The insiders are saying that Ebola, or something as deadly as Ebola, will resurface between mid-January and April. And as you have seen, the flimsiest excuses for detainment and incarceration for Americans has been set into place. We will see mandatory vaccination and medical martial law in 2015. There is yet another challenge coming our way after the first of the year, and that has to do with the world's arms race and World War III preparations as the new Cold War is moving towards a hot war. As many of us noted last summer, we were witnessing the emergency infrastructure shift from peacetime to martial law. Remember the consistent scenario which has been revealed on this site: medical martial law followed by military martial law, which will culminate in World War III. We are in the quiet time. When the clock strikes midnight on January 1st, 2015, we will begin another countdown. The countdown to Armageddon. I hope that wakes you up. I know it sounds crazy. Please share this information. We've got to wake people up and get people thinking about it, at least considering it. Maybe people will at least get in the Word of God a little bit. Maybe people will start watching the news a little closer and start paying attention to what's going on, because it is going to get crazier and crazier. And I just have this feeling that 2015 is the year that it all starts to really go down. And could I be wrong? Absolutely. But it's certainly a feeling of mine, and certainly the feeling of a lot of other people. All right. I feel the need to read a little bit of Scripture to bring this all to a close. Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Let's go to one other verse here. I want to go to Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3 and 5. It's good advice for where we're at in time right now in this country, and in all of us personally. Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. America, unfortunately, does not acknowledge God in all of our ways anymore. We've removed God, and God's hedge of protection around this nation is being removed. Because we've removed God, and we're turning our backs on Israel. But personally, there's still time for personal salvation. There's still time for personal repentance and returning to the Lord. And if you do, the Bible makes it clear, all who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. But there is only one way and one truth, and one path to God, that is Jesus Christ. The Bible says there's one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus. Jesus Christ himself said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. And let's go to, real quickly, I know I want to make sure I get it exactly right, so I'm going to turn to it. But I want to go to Romans chapter 10 real quick. Romans chapter 10, verse 8, 9, and 10. But what saith it? The word is neither even in thy mouth and in thy heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the Scripture saith, whoso believeth on him shall not be ashamed. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. You're running out of time, though. All the signs are here. Jesus is soon to return for his true church, his bride. You do not want to be left behind. Make sure you're ready and keep looking up. God bless everyone.